I came to you and Barbara Denenpont, who's the executive director of the Gangaji Foundation, with an idea of doing these 15, 20, 25-minute stories of people that are students of yours. And some of the stories are directly about you, that you're involved directly in the story. And some people, it's just a pure reflection of your teaching. So this first one we're presenting this month, or we're releasing this month, is called The Medicine Woman. And it's actually all about the call for help and what can happen when you just say help.
I think that's really a good example, because I wouldn't say that she's a student of mine. And it was just a kind of synchronistic event that happened where my words, a picture, or her and her vision correlated. And to me, that's even better. It's more exquisite in that we are all so connected that when one aspect of ourselves is asking for alignment or truth or peace or direction, there is a response in some other aspect of ourselves, and that's what we call each other. So I love this story from Mika, but I hadn't even met Mika when that happened. We had never looked at each other face to face. And that is really the deep essence of it, that it's not that you have to be learning anything from me or Papaji or Ramana. It's just the willingness to ask and to open and then to see how it all reveals itself. And that's why these stories to me are so potent, because they're different people, different kinds of experiences, but they finally come down to trusting yourself. And that's what the support is for, is really trusting yourself deeper than your thoughts about what you should be doing or thinking or feeling. We get so much bad news in so many directions, and our mind generates bad news as protection. To really have these proofs of what's possible and how available that is and how different it is for everyone. And then we don't try to standardize ourselves into some form, looking like somebody or thinking like somebody. We really can open to see, how does it show up here in this particular form?
This first story is about asking for help, telling the truth, and returning home. It's about Mika. She's a medicine woman. She was born into a long tradition of medicine women. Her mother's side is Mescalero Apache. She learned medicine from her mother and her grandmother before her, down through a lineage that goes back generations. Now, I don't know if this is completely true, but I've heard that what some shaman have in common is that they have faced some sort of life and death situation that somehow adds to their ability to see things in a different way, that somehow ignites their gift and brings it into form. Now, that's true of Mika. She came into this world 3 months premature, and for the first few months of her life, there was a question as to whether or not she'd make it at all.
Mom she still is, a medicine woman. And she was brought up by a medicine woman, traditional native medicine woman, or curandera. She believed that she needed to get me out of the hospital as soon as possible. So even though the doctors were saying, first of all, they said, we're not going to save that baby. You have to choose your life or your baby's life. And my mom said that that's not an option, that they have to try to save us both. And as soon as I was stable enough, she took me out of the incubator and took me home.
So basically, for that first year, Mika's mother held her and fed her at first with a dropper, as she had to use a little dropper because that's all she could tolerate. And that went on for a year until she was strong. Years went by. It was clear that there was something different about Mika.
It was just so normal and natural to communicate with the earth and feel the rhythm of the earth and feel the essence of the mountains and the trees. and the wind, to hear the wind, hear the rhythm of the wind, hear the messages of the wind, that I didn't know anything different.
By age 9, people would come over to the house. Her mother would feed them, and Mika would treat them. She learned from her grandmother that if you quiet the mind, you can hear another person's body. And that's the medicine she practiced. Fast forward 10 years, Mika had graduated from college. She got a BA degree in psychology and a minor in music and Spanish literature. And that was when she made the decision to go to medical school, in part to get away from her native medicine. As you were growing up and you were treating people, and there's some way you see things differently than most people, is there a way that in that decision was any sense that this gift was a burden that you wanted?
Oh, yeah, right. I felt like there was my sister, my middle sister, who was doing art. She would wear bright colors. She would be off playing, and I would be taking care of the sick people that would trail on in. And I didn't feel like it was fair.
Going into med school, Mika was looking forward to the fact that she would be able to learn using her mind, and she liked that. In essence, she would finally be normal, but things didn't quite go the way she planned. For her, school became about, as she calls it, memorization and regurgitation. Almost from the beginning, she started to become ill. It would start every day as she drove to school.
I would be doubled over in pain in my gut. It would be so excruciating that I'd be like trying to drive and find a parking spot. But I never connected it. Not consciously. I didn't connect it that I was in the wrong place, because I was in the right place because I was taking care of people, just in a different way.
One day, something happened that would change the course she was on. It happened while she was taking care of a house. She was house-sitting for some people while they were out of town. And on this particular day, she was wandering through the house, looking for a place to study.
They had many rooms in the house. And I went upstairs and found this little nook. And there was this altar. And there was a picture on the altar. And so I said, oh, well, this is a pretty quiet room. I'll just study in here. And it wasn't that night. It was the next day, I think, where I went back up to that room, is what happened. And I just came unglued. I was crying hysterically. And I saw this picture and I said in my head, that must be an important person because they're on an altar. And it was just that picture of this person in blue on an altar. So I said, well, I'll just ask for help here because I am so messed up. And I couldn't put all the pieces together. I just said, I need some help. And I didn't know what I was doing. I'm completely lost.
In the following days, a series of synchronicities occurred that would eventually help her return to her medicine, back to her natural gifts. And one of them was a phone call she received from her mother.
It was a Thursday. My mom called me and she said, how are you? What's going on? Are you liking it? Are you doing okay? And I told her, no, I don't like it. I don't want to be here. And she said, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And I said, I heard about this naturopathic school in Portland, Oregon. And she said, oh, okay, well, don't tell your father, but I'll come pick you up tomorrow at 5:30 in the morning and we'll drive there to go check it out. And I was so happy.
Mika ended up leaving med school. She enrolled in naturopathic college, and a year later, she began studying acupuncture and Chinese medicine. She was back to her native medicine. It was a journey she really could have never imagined. She started a successful practice, and rather than seeking out patients herself, they just naturally showed up, just as they did when she was 9.
Hi, how are you today? Hey, Mika. Come on in. Hey. Go ahead and get comfortable.
You would think that that's a pretty good ending to Mika's story, But there's actually more here. There's one more twist. Almost 20 years after she quit med school, something unexpected happened that would take Mika back to that little room with the altar and the photograph. 17 years later, there's a twist in this story. Could you tell me what happened?
Yeah, so I was asked to treat a spiritual teacher by the name of Gangaji.
And had you heard of her before?
I had heard of her, but I hadn't met her before. And I hadn't sat with Gangaji. And I was just asked to treat her. So, of course, I said, yes, I'll treat Gangaji.
So you did the treatment, and what happened to her? I mean, did something...
Yeah, so I was finishing up the treatment, and I was just about to take my hands away from her body. And in that moment, I had this flash, this awareness that was the lady in the picture, the lady in blue.
The lady in the picture was Gangaji?
Yeah.
From 17 years before?
The people that was on the altar.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It's like I came full circle. It was all full circle, and it was so validating.
I had one last question that I wanted to ask Mika as we wrapped up her story, and that was, when she looks back at the moment in that little room in Denver, Colorado, and all the things that changed as a result, what was her biggest takeaway from that? What is it that she learned?
The moment that I asked for help, I started being my true self. And that I haven't veered from that since that moment, since that time. I mean, if you think about it, it's like that happened. And then who knows, a day or two later, the dance teacher called and my ex-roommate said something about naturopathic school. And then mom called. I mean, it was in such a short span of time. And everything, when you are your truth, everything is smooth and you're living in the heavenly realm.
One could say that Mika has come full circle since the day she put out that call for help. You could say that she has returned home, back to the medicine of her grandmother.
Okay, good to go. See you in 5 weeks.
All right, thank you.
Love you.
Love you too. If you'd like to help support us in putting more of these stories like this out into the world, you can find out about donating to Gangaji Radio by writing us at gangajiradio@gangaji.org. I'm Hillary Larson. This has been Epiphany on Gangaji Radio.
Didn't sleep.